I'm Constance Cullman. I'm president and CEO of the Farm Foundation. We're an agricultural policy institute that we cultivate dynamic, nonpartisan collaboration to meet society's needs for food, feed, and fiber, and energy. Since 1933, we've been pulling folks from across the food and ag sector together to have construct many of those issues that are facing rural America. And today, we believe we are in partnership with CoBank, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, NTCA-The Rural Broadband Association, and the National Rural Utilities Cooperative Finance Corporation. I've been using their acronyms, so forgive me for reading those long names, guys. We are launching a series of workshops to highlight the wide-ranging challenges to achieving e-connectivity, as well as the opportunities improved e-connectivity could bring to the people and economies of the nation's rural regions. And I want to highlight that this morning we're going to put a finer point on that. We had originally intended to live webcast this session. We had a lot of people interested in viewing that. And unfortunately, we just happened to be right in one of those areas where e-connectivity is not as strong as we all hope it will be in rural America. So we are unable to live broadcast that, but we are recording this session, and we'll be putting it up onto the web afterwards so that people can then tune in and listen to some of the discussions and conversation. And so, with that illustrative point about the need for broadband and real access to the internet in rural America, we'd like to begin the conversation. You know, I grew up in rural America. My brothers live on the family farm, and it's the fastest growing county right now in Ohio. And great for me, I can't do any work when I go to visit, but I don't live there. And so I know from a firsthand perspective that without e-connectivity, rural citizens are simply bystanders in the U.S. economy. Their opportunities to engage in e-commerce, manage their health care, conduct banking, introduce their children to educational opportunities around the globe are all limited, increasingly putting our rural residents at a disadvantage to their urban neighbors. For agriculture, insufficient access renders many of the new innovations obsolete and useless for farmers. A system to upload site-specific data offers advancements in input uses, enhanced conservation efforts, productivity gains, unless you can't upload it. Today, access to the internet has gone from being a convenience to being a necessity. We are delighted to share a common commitment to raising the issue of the need for e-connectivity and expansion of rural broadband services with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who is joined in making e-connectivity in rural America a major priority for this administration. In demonstration of this strong commitment within the administration, we are joined today by USDA Senior Advisor to the Secretary for Infrastructure, Janine Miller. Janine, she's going to share the administration's goals for establishing and enhancing access. Of course, any task of this magnitude will necessitate a full partnership between the public and the private sector. The private sector is ready to step forward. Leaders from the partnering organizations are on hand to share their thoughts on the importance of this effort to make rural residents full participants in today's economy. We are joined today by some of those partners, CoBank's Laura Sturgeon and Ted Kerner. Just wave there. NRECA member and panelist Brian Zelenak. Brian, did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. And NTCA's Michael Daniels. Michael. And CFC's Brandon McBride. Brandon, thank you. We are also joined today by an impressive panel of experts who you will all meet this morning. For our first panel, we're going to talk about some of the needs in the upper Midwest for rural connectivity. And so I'm really delighted to have here today two gentlemen who are going to speak to some of that. I'm going to come over here and join you, if that's all right. Bill Esbeck has been the executive director of the Wisconsin State Telecommunications Association since 2002. You began your career, I believe, in the office of Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson, where he served as the policy advisor for utilities, infrastructure, and economic development. Following his 6-year stint with Governor Thompson, Bill accepted an appointment at the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, serving as executive assistant to Commissioner Joe Metner. Immediately prior to joining WSTA, he was the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs Strategies, managing the Wisconsin operation for the Regional Government Affairs and Public Relations firm. Bill holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Illinois.
True story.
That's okay. And a Master of Business Administration from the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Go Badgers.
There we go. Good Big Ten schools there. Our second panelist is Steve Fenske. Steve is the staff attorney and government relations for Minnesota Association of Townships, which advocates on behalf of 1,800 township governments in Minnesota. Steve answers legal questions for members, represents township interest at the legislature, and provides training for township officers at MAT events and by invitation of county units of townships. Steve, I would love to read Steve's full bio on his website. Google Steve Fenske and read his bio. I won't do that to you today. But it is the most entertaining bio I've read in a long time. Well, suffice it to say that he had a very nice, ordinary childhood growing up here in Minnesota. He went to the University of Minnesota's College of Liberal Arts and the law school, and he resides in Buffalo, Minnesota. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. I would like to remind everyone, though, that we have these panelists, and they're going to share some of their thoughts and observations. But the real point here is that we would like to have these conversations kick off a discussion about what you all are challenged with and are concerned with when it comes to rural e-connectivity. So guys, I'm going to have you share some of your experiences, but then I'd like to open it up and we'll have a good half hour or plus conversation amongst this group about what some of those rural needs are. So Bill, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Constance. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I want to start by thanking and recognizing Janine Miller from USDA, and thank you for facilitating this event, and also recognize the partners that are involved, NTCA-The Rural Broadband Association, the Farm Foundation, CoBank, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and the National Rural Utilities Cooperative Finance Corporation. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and offer perspectives from Wisconsin about our broadband deployment and challenges. And I want to echo some of what Constance was saying about the fact that this has really become table stakes for rural economies, rural education, and quality of life. I'm going to touch briefly on 4 points, and I know my time is short. I'm going to try and pack a lot of information in here. A high-level overview of where we are with respect to deployment in Wisconsin and where we are doing well with rural broadband deployment in Wisconsin, where we are playing catch-up with rural broadband deployment in Wisconsin. Third point, some of the federal programs that are in place right now to facilitate additional investment and also facilitate the sustainability and affordability on a long-term basis for rural broadband. And then fourth, some of the state-level programs that are in place right now to create awareness, improve deployment, and foster partnerships with respect to rural broadband. So as an overview, a very high-level overview of where we are in Wisconsin from a statewide perspective, the FCC came out with new data in February of this year for their broadband map, and Wisconsin is currently serving more than 93% of our residents with at least a 10-1 service. 10 megabits down, 1 megabit up, more than 93%. We have more than 86% of our residents served by a 25-3 connection. 25 megabits per second down, 3 megabits per second up. Not surprisingly, the gaps in our coverage on a statewide basis are in rural areas. It is more expensive to serve sparsely populated rural Wisconsin. Simply put, if you have a situation where you have miles per customer, that is more expensive to serve than if you have customers per mile. That said, I represent dozens of small rural broadband providers who serve their communities very, very well. These are 100-year-old commercial companies or 60-year-old cooperative companies. They are invested in their communities and serve them very well, similar to the companies that Brent Christensen represents here in Minnesota. These are providers who have won national awards, the NTCA Smart Rural Community Award, and state and national Gigabit Community Awards. The flip side of that is, where are we playing catch up in rural Wisconsin? And the fact of the matter is there is a digital divide in rural Wisconsin for areas that are served by large price cap carriers. That's not news to folks in the industry, but it is often unknown for folks who don't live and breathe broadband all day, every day. This is what I refer to as the rural divide. And it's primarily an issue in smaller communities like towns that have low populations to begin with and very low population densities. So that's an issue that we are seeing in Wisconsin. It's not an urban-rural divide. It's not a suburban-rural divide. It is a rural divide. However, there is good news in that the FCC has created programs specifically designed to target the very sparsely populated rural areas served by large price cap companies. CAF 2, or Connect America Fund Phase 2, is a program that the FCC initiated in 2015. That's a more than $9 billion 6-year program designed to specifically target rural broadband build-out for price cap carriers across the country. In Wisconsin, we have 3 price cap companies, AT&T, CenturyLink, and Frontier. Between them, they have accepted $570 million in CAF 2 funds to build out more than 270,000 locations. In Minnesota, there are 4 price cap carriers that will accept more than $510 million to build out 170,000 locations. By the end of 2017, price cap carriers that accepted CAF 2 funds had to have completed 40% of their build out. So we are more than halfway through this 6-year program. All the companies in Wisconsin met that goal of 40% build out by 2017. All 3 of Wisconsin's price cap companies are expected to meet the 60% completion requirement by 2018. And then there's an 80% completion requirement by 2019 and 100% by 2020. So I want to spend just a minute talking about the significance of the 230,000 locations relative to where we are on a statewide basis. 230,000 locations represents about 8.5% of the homes in Wisconsin. We are at, when the FCC started the CAF 2 program, we were at approximately 91.5% penetration with a 10-1 service in Wisconsin. If you take the 91.5% that we were at the start of the program and the 8.5% that is targeted for the program, that's going to put us at very nearly 100% penetration for at least a 10-1 service in Wisconsin by the end of the CAF 2 program. There are also FCC support mechanisms designed to assist the rate of return providers, small rural companies, expand their service and maintain sustainable networks and affordable prices for their broadband services. This is the alternative Connect America model, known as ACAM, and then there's the USF, or Universal Service High Cost Program, that offers legacy support to rate of return providers. It is critically important that the ACAM program and the Universal Service High Cost Program are fully funded by the FCC on an ongoing basis to ensure the viability, the sustainability, and the affordability of broadband products and services in those rural communities. I will close by quickly touching on 4 broadband-related programs in Wisconsin. In 2013, Governor Walker created the Broadband Expansion Grant Program. We are in the 7th grant cycle currently. 6 grant cycles of that program have already been awarded. More than 100 grants have been awarded in rural Wisconsin. focusing on partnerships and making sure that we're making sure to be mindful that we're not overbuilding.
Was that a really important point?
I'm gonna stress that one.
Let me reiterate those points. The program fosters partnerships both with the provider community, local communities, and other stakeholders on the local level, and they're mindful not to overbuild existing infrastructure with those grants. Two very important points for that program. The last grant round, the sixth grant round in this program, issued $7.5 million in grant awards that's going to stimulate approximately $20 million in investment. So they get a good effect in stimulating private sector investment to go along with the state dollars for this grant program. In 2015, WSTA partnered with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to identify and map gigabit-capable business parks in Wisconsin. We knew we had great service through the WSTA membership, but we didn't have a way to tell that story in partnership with our economic development professionals of how well we were serving our business parks. In 2015, we started with 130 gigabit business parks, primarily in rural Wisconsin. We are now up to 230 gigabit capable business parks on this map, and it's an interactive map used by economic development professionals in the site selection process. In 2016, Governor Walker signed into law the Broadband Forward Community Certification Law, which is a way for local governments to voluntarily streamline their permitting process and encourage broadband investment in their communities. In 2018, Governor Walker signed the Telecommuter Forward Community Certification, which is a way for local governments to partner with broadband providers, economic development professionals, employers, and other key stakeholders in promoting the use of telecommuting as a way to create jobs and stimulate economic activity in rural Wisconsin. I will conclude there, and I will ask that Constance ask me about the map when we get to Q&A.
You bet I will. Thank you very much. We're going to move right along to Steve. And Steve, if you'll share some of your perspectives, then we'll open it up to some questions.
Sure. So the townships, all right, the townships are the places between the places on the map, right? These are the most rural places left in the state, and they've largely been left out of broadband coverage because, as Bill mentioned, it's that distance factor. It's also a topography factor. It's what's the land around it look like, and some solutions work well, some don't seem to work at all. The broadband maps put out by the Office of Broadband Development in Minnesota really show that really well. You see a lot of red on the map. Those are townships by and large. And when Bill mentioned the rural idea, that struck me, that was new to me. There is a rural difference there. There's the rural cities, and then you've got the place outside. And that's where our members stepped in. We're a membership-driven organization. And one of the things they did about 3 years ago was to tell us broadband is now as important to us as transportation. And that's the main thing townships do, is maintain transportation. So that's where they really started to get involved, and we started to hear these stories of, I have nothing. I have dial-up. Now, I remember dial-up. I was pretty young when dial-up was, the way to get service, but I remember it. And some are telling me, hey, my phone line won't even support dial-up. And then they move into, well, what about wireless options? And they tell us their stories about wireless options, and some work for their needs, but some don't. There's a woman, far northern Minnesota. She's had a home business, and they were in the city. They moved into the family farm, about 20 miles north of Thief River Falls. All of a sudden, that business had to shut down because she couldn't get wireline service. Hotspots weren't working. Fixed wireless wasn't doing what she needed. Some places it just doesn't work. Those are the stories we hear over and over. We also hear stories that make you reconsider what are the expectations. One gentleman was telling me, I'd love to have 10-1. That would be the greatest thing in the world to get 10-1. And here I'm at, I think 60 down, 15 up, something like that in Buffalo. To me, that's that's okay. That I can do a lot with that. My family can do a lot with that. It's almost having those folks needing to learn what should they be asking for, because some out there don't even have a real sense of what can I do with this speed. And okay, if you get that speed now, that's great. Maybe that does what they need for today. What's it going to do in 5 years? What's it going to be in 10 years? And so that's some of what we've been doing is talking with those members and trying to get at what do they really need now and later, so that we don't have to come back and deal with this problem again. The other big problem we've had is, and this is discussions with township residents and with lawmakers, because everybody seems to want to do something. There seems to be really good momentum about we have this problem and we've got to fill in those red areas on the map. But there's almost a technology paralysis of which technology is right or which is the best. That seems to be what a lot of lawmakers ask. What's the best one? I don't know, and I'm not a tech guy, and I'm not going to give you an answer about that. There's all kinds of options. And one of the challenges has been fighting that idea of there's got to be one, or there's one silver bullet coming. That's another one we've heard lately. Is, for example, within the last 2 years, we've had this 5G discussion. 5G looks tremendously awesome. But from what I'm told, from what we understand, that's not likely to be deployed into these townships, into those last places where they don't have something. And it's because that's made for those high density areas. So while we're having this discussion about 5G, and I think some lawmakers have this idea that, oh, that's going to solve it. Again, it's a technology paralysis. We think this is going to solve the problem. This is a silver bullet. Just wait. And that message of just wait is something township residents have heard for 20 years. Just wait. The next thing's coming. Just wait. How long do they have to wait? And we're seeing some folks say, well, my kids won't move back to the farm. Okay, they've been waiting, and now this is having a direct impact on some of those communities. For all the reasons, this group knows, education, business, entertainment, they're all valid reasons. They're all commercial reasons to have that connection. So for all those things, these residents really just want something done. Everybody recognizes there's this problem. They just want something. They may have their technology favorites, but in the end, it's just got to be get us something that works so we can keep living here. That's the message we keep hearing from folks. Some of that has been addressed by the Border to Border Broadband Grant Program. That's expanding that footprint. I know you'll hear more about that later. But those are the kind of things that have worked really well. Or partnering with providers. That has worked really well too, to start to get those conversations going, to identify the needs, working with businesses that may need something and expanding off of that. All of those are things that are helping townships. The question remains, how quickly are we going to get there? What's going to happen in the interim? Are you going to have people that want to move out to those areas? When I look to move, I look for broadband service, and I don't think I'm alone in that at all. I don't think I'm unusual. That's just going to become more common. And Constance mentioned it. This is a utility. This is something that it feels like you need. You go to reach for the light switch, when the power's off, not thinking, you try to turn it on. You do the same thing with the internet if you use it a lot. It touches so many parts of your daily life once you have it that it becomes indispensable. That's where I think township residents, they see that, they understand that, and they want that too. They want the inclusion. They're tired of hearing the just wait. They're just feeling left out. And that's the place from which those township officers come to this.
Thank you both very much. I'd like to reiterate that this is being recorded, and we are going to be preparing a transcription of this and give to decision makers both in the private and the public sector that are wrestling with the very challenges that you two have laid out and some of the solutions that might be there. I'm going to ask a couple questions, but I'm also going to open it up to anyone here in the audience that would like to ask a question. Bill, you know what? I'm going to defer to your map first. I have another question for you, but
Sure.
So you have this map laid out that looks like some of the areas where the nation's largest phone companies as price cap carriers are looking at some of that phase 2 support. So can you explain that a little bit? Or?
Right. You hit the nail on the head. This map shows where Wisconsin's price cap carriers, AT&T, CenturyLink, and Frontier, have accepted CAF2 funding for targeted build-out in rural Wisconsin. And it is a great visual of what I talked about earlier, where you have miles per customer instead of customers per mile. If you look at the shaded area, and if you go online, you can see this in color, obviously. But if you look at the shaded area, it is well over 8.5% of the landmass in Wisconsin. However, the funds for the CAF2 program in Wisconsin are targeting only 8.5% of the homes in our state, 230,000 homes in Wisconsin. So you can see the contradiction between the footprint that is being covered and the percentage of homes that are going to be served. And this, this map is a great illustration and a great visual of the challenges that companies face in serving rural Wisconsin. That's why the federal government had to step in with the CAF2 program and provide these companies $570 million over 6 years for these build-outs. And that doesn't cover the cost of the build-out. It's a portion of the cost of the build-out. So it is, it is assistance that will help these residents get service.
Thank you. And Bill, you also mentioned, and Steve, you alluded to this as well, that the 10-1. Okay, so when we've talked about broadband and e-connectivity, we've talked not only about pure coverage, but we've also talked about quality of coverage. Is 10-1 adequate for really anything beyond normal household use, or when you're talking about actually trying to do some big data moves up or down, is 10-1 adequate for that?
I'm not an expert on what you can do with the speeds. From what I understand, 10-1, you could do email, you could do basic websites, video streaming, possibly. But if you have a household of people using it, which is more and more common once you have, again, it becomes indispensable to every person who has a device. So you have more than one on at the same time.
So don't do business after the kids get home from school?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And even streaming video. If you're going to look at video, we're talking about 4K TVs now. Well, that takes a lot more data than your standard high def or your 720 or 480, which is DVD quality. So the more we advance with that stuff, and all those things are out there for people to buy, they understand that's available. Sometimes they come to learn, I can't even make use of what that thing does. And again, that's a reminder, I'm being left out of that. So as we do the builds, we're looking at doing this anyway, it's got that great momentum. Why do something that's just going to need to be redone? That's one of the questions that we ask and we try to point out.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I get this question a lot, what is fast enough? And one of the data points that I look at is the Netflix website. They recommend at least a 3 meg connection for standard definition streaming. They look for a 5 meg connection for HD streaming. And to Steve's point, they look for a 25 meg connection for Ultra HD. So as technology improves, consumers are going to demand more bandwidth and bigger pipes. But I do want to touch on another quick question that I get relative to the 10-1 goal of CAF2 versus the FCC's own definition of 25.3 for broadband. And there are components of the 25.3 that I think were policy related. There's an aspirational component to that goal and a political component to that definition. But the FCC is slightly schizophrenic when they define broadband as 25.3, but they have CAF2 build out targeting 10.1. And the fact of the matter is, we don't have the funding available on a national basis to cover everyone that's targeted for the CAF2 program at 10.1. We didn't have that funding available to cover those same consumers at 25.3. So the FCC program is reflective of reality in that they did not have an unlimited checkbook, but it is a good first step. And if you have 10.1, you can stream 2 HD Netflix movies at the same time in your house. If you've got 3 teenage boys like I do, that's going to present an issue if everyone's in their room watching different devices all at the same time. However, it's a functional broadband service. It will allow you to telecommute. It will allow you to do things that are very helpful from a residential perspective. It's not an ideal business solution.
And when we talk 10.1, those are typically advertised speeds. So there's questions about what do you get at different times, and depending on the technology. Like my neighborhood, it gets kind of slow around 7 o'clock in the evening as everybody's turning on Netflix, I'm sure. That also plays a factor in what are you actually getting when you buy your 10.1. Is that what they're delivering? Though that would be helpful to know as we talk about what should we be doing in the future.
You have a question? Yeah.
I did. I'm Laura Spinning with NTIA, and I was just curious, Bill, with some of the numbers you talked about, the $570 million that the FCC is investing to cover the gaps in Wisconsin, and you said that's just, what's the total cost of that, what percentage of the total is the 570?
So the question is, what percentage of the total being spent in Wisconsin is the 570 from the FCC? I'm just doing that for the recording.
Okay, so I just was trying to understand those numbers. What's the total cost
Sure.
and what's the FCC's investment?
I don't have a firm number on that. That's going to depend on how the individual companies approach their investments. I'm going to ballpark it at maybe half of the total cost. The FCC set up the CAF2 program as both a carrot and a stick, in that they offered the funding to the price cap carriers, and the price cap carriers could have turned that money down. However, if they had turned it down on a statewide basis, they had to say yes or no. If they had turned that funding down, then that money would have been available to their competitors to come in and serve those same customers in their own backyard. So there was an incentive to say yes from both a carrot and a stick perspective.
And in general, that's to get them from something like 10.1 to 25.3 or just to 10.1?
The target for the CAF2 build out for those 230,000 locations in Wisconsin is 10.1. So and there will be, of those 230,000 new customers, there will be customers that are above 10.1 simply because it's a distance-sensitive technology and they're going to be closer to the fiber. But the goal is to get at least 10.1 out to the most rural customers.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions, but I'm going to ask everyone's forbearance to go to the microphone so that we can capture it for the recording. We have one here to my right and one here to my left. So whichever one's most convenient. We'll go here, and then the gentleman over here on the right.
So I was really pleased to see the townships here. I'm Barbara Jarrett Klein. I'm from Lee Sueur County, right across the highway. And as it happens, I'm running for the Minnesota House, and I'm out talking to people, and they're just wild about this. People are renting apartments to homeschool their children. The rural dividing is exactly what we're dealing with. So as a part of this, I decided, I've worked in county government, we've got a planning committee together. We're working with Blandon, we're getting stuff done. We've got 4 of us here working on getting this thing moving. One of the things I learned about the townships is they don't have emails. I mean, this is really huge. The township issue is really huge. I'm so glad to see you here. We had 6 of the 14 townships in our county write letters of support for our Blandon proposal. I don't even know if we communicated with the rest of them because you have to call them all, and if they're farmers, they're not there. I see my township guy across the road cultivating stuff, and that's why I hook up with him. So the township issue is really enormous, and we really need to figure out how to educate and uplift that. And then we're going to mail-in voting now in our township because, and yet the township is such an important structure in Minnesota. So I'm really pleased to see you here. Thank you. And how can we uplift townships?
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. We spend a shocking amount on postage because folks don't have emails. A lot of our members don't.
So the U.S. Post Office likes you.
They love
but,
us, I'm
okay.
sure, yes. Part of it is it's just got to be available. You know, once it's available, people start to use it a little bit. They realize all the advantages they get with it, and then they start making changes in their life, right? I didn't start with a computer. I mean, we had one, but it was rarely used. It became over time as these things were available. It becomes something you use more and more as you understand its conveniences. That's what I think a lot of township officers come to realize once they get service. They start to see all the benefits. They understand it's something going on and that they're left out. They want to be included. Once they've got it, yeah, then we start to see these changes. And I think, again, that just continues that momentum of this is really something, I don't know how I went without it for so long.
Yes.
Good morning. I'm Bruce Miller. I'm with the Minnesota Farmers Union and want to thank the foundation for organizing this meeting. A couple of brief things. One is I still run into people who tell me that as they were growing up in rural Minnesota, rural Wisconsin, rural America, that they remember when the power lines came over the hill and when their farm got power. Well, some of those same people are still waiting for the internet to make it over the same hill. And we've just conducted over the past 2 years 16 listening sessions that we've called Rural Voices discussions. They're on our webpage if you want to see them. And after the high cost of health care and some specific agricultural issues, the need for broadband internet in rural Minnesota was at the top of the list, top 5. You know, it's a case of, it's not just, we're talking about Netflix and we're talking about entertainment. Our farmers aren't looking for entertainment. They're looking for the ability to do business on their farms. We're talking about the need to get data, to send data for your crops, for your dairy, for everything else. So the higher the speed, the better it is. And it's not really an uncommon thought that as you're seeing mostly urban television in rural Minnesota or rural Wisconsin, and you see the television commercials touting high-speed internet, you know, you kind of want that in those small towns and on that family farm as much as it is in a Minneapolis or a Madison or Washington, D.C. It's a question I think many of our people have of why not? It's not when, it's why not, and then it's when. I think the real other piece of this puzzle that I would like you to address, I guess, is affordability. It's not enough just to have high-speed internet. It's being able to afford it at your computer, on your phone. I had a farmer, passed away now, but he farmed in southwest Minnesota. I could always tell when he got to the end of the field and turned his tractor around because there'd get a call on my phone saying, this is Tim. Bruce, this is Tim. And we'd talk, and then I could tell when he hit the other end of his field because he said, oh, I gotta go now. And he turned his tractor. That whole time, this guy is using his cell phone, and he would talk about the need when he went into the farm that night, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, to address the issues that he could address having internet access where he specifically was. I can point out just about as many people, and we heard it from county commissioners, we heard it from township officers, and we really heard it from farmers, that this is a problem that needs to be fixed and fixed more quickly than we might be able to do so. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for those comments. I'm sorry, Bill.
If I could just respond to that, I think you hit the nail on the head with the analogy to rural electrification, and I will tell you the closest thing that I think we are seeing with respect to broadband deployment and rural electrification, the analogy is the CAF2 program that is really helping the large price cap carriers get their broadband deployed in those rural areas that don't have it yet. I agree with you from an agriculture perspective. Smart farming and being able to micro-target your fertilizer, your watering, using the Internet of Things. And there's a really fascinating example to me about how the Internet of Things can play into dairy farming. You can put Internet of Things, smart devices on each individual cow in your dairy herd, and if a cow spikes a fever or sneezes, you can separate that cow from the herd. That's going to save a significant amount of hassle and time and expense if you can identify things like that very early on and separate a sick cow from your dairy herd. The final thing I'll mention with respect to affordability, and I've gotten this question too, if price cap carriers are building out in rural Wisconsin, are they going to charge their customers more? No, they are not. They have national advertising campaigns. They have price points that are set on a national basis. I don't think we are going to see a price cap carrier like an AT&T or CenturyLink or Frontier gouging their rural customers for those broadband products and services. But from an affordability perspective, when we talk about smaller rate of return companies, the ACAM model and the high cost support that these companies get is incredibly important as an ongoing support mechanism to make sure that we not only have the networks in place, but that we have affordable prices for the customers in those rural communities. It doesn't make any sense to have the service available if it's not affordable. So those support mechanisms have to stay in place, and they have to be fully funded on an ongoing basis by the FCC.
And I just want to remind everyone, we have entered our open mic phase of the agenda. So even if it's a comment and not a question, we welcome you sharing that. Yes, right over here.
Hey, I'm Jake Ward with Jaguar Communications. We are a fiber optic telecommunications provider based out of Owatonna. We do service a lot of rural Minnesota. I did have a question for Bill. With the grants that are going out to AT&T, Frontier, and CenturyLink, what sort of infrastructure are they putting into the ground? Is it fiber optics, copper cabling, or coax?
So I believe CenturyLink and Frontier are approaching their deployment using DSL technology, so that's going to be a combination of fiber and copper. AT&T has gotten a waiver from the FCC to use fixed wireless to deploy their 10.1 service. So that will be a tower near a residence and an antenna or receiver on the side of the house or in the house that will be, the proverbial last mile will be a wireless service. However, in getting that waiver from the FCC, AT&T had to commit to make that service for the customer look and feel like a wired service. So there are not going to be data caps that you would typically associate with a wireless service or a satellite service, or they're not going to be data caps that are really going to be, that will come into play. So they have to approach it from a customer experience to make it look and feel like a wired option.
Okay, I have a follow-up with that as well. I know that there's large price cap companies out there that are able to do more work than local providers such as ourselves, and they have the availability to do so. They can match the dollars on the larger scale. But just from a standpoint of not a business, but a person who understands technology, why would the government want to deploy a 10x1 infrastructure when it's already outdated? That sort of speed and technology won't keep up with the industry as it grows. I know, coming from a farming industry, because I grew up on a farm, that was around when I was growing up on the farm. That now with the technology, like you stated, where the herds of cattle can have the the chip on the side to tell if it has a fever, or your grain bin has the technology to tell when it's the right time to sell. All of that stuff won't run off a 10x1 connection, like you said, because the 10 is the download. Yes, that provides the information that you want to pull from the internet, but the one upload is never going to be enough to carry and push that technology out. So I'm just wondering from the standpoint of why would we be dropping $570 million into a Band-Aid infrastructure?
I think the answer to the question is simply a matter of resources from the FCC. I mean, this is a more than $9 billion program on a national basis, and there was not a blank check that was available for this program. The FCC created their formula, and they identified the possible instead of the perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Good observations. Yes.
My name is Jerry Grosskreutz. I'm a farm broadcaster here at KDHL Radio, and I still farm in southern Minnesota. Sorry I got here late. I was on the air. So my apologies if this has already been addressed. Obviously, we all know about the importance of agriculture and the latest technology, but I'd like to give you an example of a friend that I have. His wife works for a large international bank, and she's working on projects, and she works from home. She can work from home because she has access to high-speed internet. There was a time when he was up working during the day, and she was working at night because she was working on a project in Europe. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood the economic advantages of having high-speed internet in rural areas, so maybe we all don't have to live in the metro area, or we all don't have to live in Rochester or Mankato. There's a lot of other economic development I feel that can happen if we have the modern technology of high-speed internet. And there are some, my farm was down in south central Minnesota, a little town of Wells. And a year ago, I was out there working the ground in the spring, and they were out on the edge of my field, and I think it was Blue Earth Valley something, they were installing fiber optics. And we're in the middle of nowhere. And if more companies could be doing that, I think we could have a lot more economic activity in rural areas.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If I could add,
absolutely.
people talk about jobs and the importance of jobs, and that is just such a. I missed the joke. I'm sorry.
That's his
Must have
company.
been his
Oh,
area.
okay.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Oh, there we go. So there we go.
That's our company.
Oh, okay. Great.
We're not one of the price tag companies. We're an ACAM company. I believe that area where he was talking about was actually an area that we were able to serve through a grant from the Office of Broadband Development. So
Okay. So that fiber optic went in.
that program later, but that's been very beneficial for companies like us to get to these really remote areas with the technology that we think is future-proof and can stand the test of time. So.
Right.
My
So.
dad is 84 years old, and he was trading stock and everything in the middle of nowhere. So I guess it worked. He actually had better access or faster than I did at the studio when we're MP3 and huge files and audio and stuff. It was actually better sitting out in the middle of nowhere. I was impressed.
I'll get
So
you
that-
the address later and I'll send you a check. Thank you.
So a little appreciation for recognizing that Jim's company is actually out there doing some of that fiber optic with some assistance and things. So that's great. And for those of you just repeating that for the recording, but I want to make sure that that's caught, because those are the types of stories that are really important to hear, and the impact that's having on some of the folks that are dependent and on those lines. We have another. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted to respond to that.
I was just going to add, there's been a couple comments about jobs and economic development, and that's a big piece of it. For places that, we hear the stories of there's not a lot of jobs here. Well, if you can connect remotely, that opens up a world of possibilities that weren't there before. And to Bruce's comment earlier, if you're going to be at Farm Fest in 6 weeks, go around to the implement dealers and talk to them about how much those machines cost, and then talk to them about how they connect wirelessly if it's available. And you'll see that connection, and with the huge investment you have to make in those things, the value that gets added by that connectivity if you can do it.
Yeah. And just to add to that, we were just at a major equipment manufacturer headquarters and talking about that very issue. And the ability to grab that data is incredible, but unless you can upload it, And unless you can turn that data into information, it's not worth the money that you would pay for that equipment because you're not able to capture that. So that's, yeah, definitely a good point. Steve, we have a question over here.
Yeah,
or
thank
a
you.
comment.
My name is TJ Malasky. I'm with the Grange, and I live in a rural community an hour north of Minneapolis. And what I see is that the young families there are young families who are there because we're on the fringe of connectivity. And they can still work in the cities, have employment readily available to them, be able to pay for their families, but still have that connectivity. And so that we know is an important component of getting people to move to rural areas. These are people who grew up in the suburbs or grew up in urban areas. Even though we know 20% of Americans live in rural America, a lot more want to live in rural America. A lot more want to live in small towns. They want to live on acreage. They want that small town community. And likewise, I think we need to be looking at the age of our farmers right now. We're going to have a lot of agricultural land that's going to need farmers, and we're going to have to pull from urban and suburban areas, either people who grew up there or our rural children who have taken a hiatus in those urban and rural areas. And I'm wondering how we leverage or build relationships with urban centers to help support these initiatives of growing our connectivity as a benefit for the entire population of Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Do you
Yeah,
want to comment on that?
Yeah, one of the things that I mentioned that we've already done in Wisconsin is create a telecommuter forward community certification. And I think this speaks to your point. We are creating conversations on the local level between the community, the providers, economic development professionals, other stakeholders like real estate professionals and tourism professionals to understand the broadband options that are available and make sure that we are promoting those in an effective way. And this was an idea that came from Bayfield County, very northern Wisconsin, right on Lake Superior. It's a beautiful area. It's got the Apostle Islands National Lake Shore. If you've never been there, you have to see it. You've heard about the ice caves during the winter, I'm sure. The local company, WSTA member company Norvado in Bayfield County, is fiber to the home. They have a tremendous partnership between Chad Young, who's their CEO, Scotty Sandstrom, who is the Economic Development Coordinator for Bayfield County, and WSTA members like Cliff Albertson, promoting telecommuting on the local level. If you go to the Birkebeiner, you see them talking about their broadband, and you can live there, work there, play there. They understand what they have to offer people who want to live there year-round and telecommute. They also understand that they have the fiber-fed broadband to make that happen. We are taking that concept that they've developed on the local level, creating a state framework around it, and packaging it so that other communities can replicate that around the state. And then from a WSTA perspective, we will be hosting telecommuter job fairs and symposiums, bringing in all of the communities that are telecommuter certified, bringing in employers like United Healthcare that have thousands of telecommuters around the country and other companies like that, making sure that we are creating jobs and stimulating economic development in rural America.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Oh, here we go.
Good morning, Constance, Bill, and Steve. Thank you for your time and expertise today. My name is Carl Menk, and I'm the Director of IT and Facilities for Tri-City United School District. And I've been working for the last 25 years in service to education, specifically with technology. And I would only encourage you to consider partnerships with those agencies that already have a fairly substantial build-out and footprint. Our last award, having worked on the Technical Advisory Committee for South Central Service Cooperative in Socrates, was awarded to Jaguar Communications. And we are so very grateful for the excellent work that they've done. But more importantly, that footprint already exists. So we'd like to certainly offer services and expertise in hopefully providing some solutions, particularly in LeSueur County, where we've got that diagonal line on your map there, where there's a very large void, and that connectivity will then avail that to us. So thanks again.
Excellent suggestion. Thank you very much for sharing that. One of the other questions that I had for the two of you, and you know, I don't mean to put you on the spot a little bit because I didn't ask you this or prepare you for this question at all, but one of the things I was curious about, and we have a couple of partners here that have been interested in financing some of the, you know, different ventures and different activities. But other than grants from government entities, have you run into any particular challenges from a financing standpoint? I mean, the large companies, the investor-owned companies, you know, obviously when their board of directors sits down and they look at different investment opportunities, they're obligated in many ways to go with the one with the biggest ROI, right? Return on investment. And so from the private sector, sometimes that can be a bit challenging for the larger companies. Some of the rural companies have a slightly different business model or a different rationale for how they make some of those decisions, so it works for them. But I'm curious, as you've kind of encountered that, either from a township perspective or Bill, from your perspective up in Wisconsin, what are some of the challenges from a financing standpoint and attracting some private dollars?
For townships, they tend not to finance, so they tend to rely on something else. And that's changed actually within the last couple of years, but that is the big issue. That's that distance piece. It's can the company installing get something back for it? And we recognize that it's got to be a partnership. We understand that the profit motive, they have to get their money back. The CAF2 and ACAM dollars have helped. You know, that pushes out the footprint. The state's broadband program has helped, you know, give those grants out. What we saw within the last couple of years is a township deciding they're going to leverage their own money. And they ended up working with CenturyLink to, CenturyLink was going to do some improvements there anyway. They said, well, we want to do fiber to the home. And they worked with them. That was exactly what they're supposed to do. They got a solution together, and they're getting to the point where they're going to deliver that. That's the self-financed, you know, model, and I think another township is looking at doing something similar now. Those are new, but it is, and it's a community action, very local. I mean, that's as local as I understand it to be. I haven't heard of any program quite like that. The other option has been co-ops, and we've had discussions with electric co-ops. They're interested, but it's just not their business. You know, that's something new to them, so they're hesitant to it. I understand that they have been working with some of the internet service providers. They're partnering because they have the expertise. They may be able to help them. They're maybe selling it through the co-op. They're providing, you know, some service end to it. I think that's all helping. But when the co-op's involved, that's where I think they get a different mindset of we can wait longer before we get a return on investment, or we don't expect the same money back in the same amount of time. Those, I think, have helped. I think those are the only models I've seen for financing.
Okay, thank you.
So I think between the state, federal options like the RUS loans, and I know Janine is taking the lead on a $600 million pilot project for rural deployment. There are avenues for my members to access capital, but I think when we're looking at all of those different options, we just have to be mindful of overbuilding existing infrastructure and encouraging partnerships to the extent possible. But to one of your other points, my companies have definitely made decisions to reach customers that do not demonstrate a return on investment. It's a function of their proximity to the community, their investment, literally and figuratively, in the community. They are making decisions that don't always make sense from a business perspective, because these are people that they play softball with and go to church with and see in the grocery store, and they're close to their communities in a way that other larger companies are not.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm going to be more of a stickler about this. Could you use the microphone just so we can make sure we capture your comments? Thank you. No, that's all right. Thank you.
One of the pilot programs we have going on right now for LeSueur County in partnership with Jaguar Communications and Cannon Valley Co-op is to have those nodes of the last mile provision available. And typically, given the topology in our area, the broadband wireless solution as the endpoint for that last mile has been very effective. One of the transitions that we made back about 9 months ago was putting a 360-degree node that had about 4.5 to 5 mile reach off of that CVC tower. Again, a good local business partnership, and also a good conduit for communication back to those people that we can't reach who do not have email, right? Because typically it's that common meeting point for other purposes. So again, as we stack and leverage those relationships, and more importantly, build those new conduits of communication, I think we can find, maybe more collective ways of solving the problem and getting to those people that we can't reach in other ways. So, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, another comment here.
The other big missing link for us is, as a rural county, is the cities have economic development folks. The county does not have economic development folks. So we're looking at, and I'm asking for some feedback on this, how do we map the economic development needs of the rural parts so that we know that when we do the broadband plan, it's going to go to the right places? We know where the schools and the hospitals are. There's no map of where the businesses are, where the big farms are. There's no economic development map for the county, for the townships, and how do we do that?
I'm aware of some folks that help with that. I think that's, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think Blandon helps with that on some ends, and I think some other counties could maybe help you. There's a lot of folks who are interested in this, and everyone I've talked to, from regardless of the county or the provider or the nonprofit, everybody's just trying to get something done. So I think there are resources out there. I think Mark Erickson was one who was formerly a county economic development officer. There's some other folks out there that could probably help, or rely on your other counties. See who's doing it right. That's what I would start with, and that's what we've talked to townships about. Look at other people who you think are doing it right. Call them, find out what they're doing. See what worked for them for a partnership, or how they decided where to bring something out. And they may have those resources for you. That's where I would start, as I am not an expert in that piece of it.
Any other comments during this open mic session? Any concerns or issues that anyone in the room would like to raise for the record? Well, I didn't mean to ask a question that provided a perfect segue into our next panel, Bill and Steve, but I think we did. Because you immediately went to some of the different types of partnerships and the different kinds of solutions that people are finding, and indeed a couple of folks from our audience did as well. And so that really prepares us for our next panel. So if you all would help me show our appreciation to Steve and Bill, we'll transition.
Thank you.